Years of non-deductible IRAs. We all know that everybody does perfect tax returns. We have a situation here where a new client has been making non-deductible IRA contributions since 2014. In reviewing past tax returns, there has not been an 8606 filed. Client can show that they have made these contributions. I, as a preparer, feel very comfortable reporting and catching this up. How do I do that? How can I put prior, if you look at the 8606, line 2 asks for the basis in the IRA. Line 1 is how much is the non-deductible this year. How do I fill out line 2 in 2025 for those 8606s that have never been filed? David's ready for this one.
I think there's two ways you might want to go about this. There's the expedient way, and then there's the fill in all forms way. The expedient method would be just make sure you've got substantiation and support to document that all of these contributions were made and that they are in fact non-deductible. And then I might just adjust the beginning basis of the current year Form 8606. That would be the easy peasy way. The alternative, and this depends on how much you want to spend time filling out 8606s, would be to go back as far as you need to and basically prepare and file, and bear in mind this is a standalone form, file an 8606 for each year showing the contribution and adjusting the basis on a rolling basis coming all the way to the current year. Now, the reason I might want to do this on an expedient method, for those of you who have ever had to deal with prior year adjustments of carryover items, for example, a passive loss carryover, you don't need to go back and amend prior year returns. Right. You can just adjust the current year return. That might be the best method to go about, but there might be other things that other people think of.
Now, Laura.
And I would use that Form 8275 because it is your great memorialization of everything that happened, and you could say, and I have all the documentation, and you keep that documentation in the current year's file. And is the 8275 really the right thing because you're getting a penalty taken off? Not really, but they don't give us another way to say, hey, by the way, and I'm all for, hey, by the way.
Now, Mark, wait. I got a question for you, real quick. Do we have, on Schedule D, I'm sure you've done this more than once, fill out, not coverage long, coverage short, but have everything upon request.
Everything on request. I think I may have done that once 30 years ago, but then I actually learned what Schedule D was for. Unrequest isn't appropriate on an individual tax return. There is still an availability on a corporate return to put details available, but not on an individual for a Schedule D transaction.
Okay.
Or an 8949.
How about an 8606?
An 8606, that's an interesting question. So the details available, if I was really that concerned that I'd missed many prior years, might even put the forms together real quick just to make sure my math was working all the way along. But I mean, I can add 7,000 plus 7,000. But certainly, we could have done that and then even attach it to a PDF to a current year. But at a minimum, if I'm going to put something on as a carry forward into my 2025 year that wasn't on 24, I'm going to be attaching something to the return that says where that name came from, the number came from. So I will put a statement on the return that said, carry forward information determined from prior year data, maybe an explanation. You said in 8275, the disclosure form. Earlier you said that's not an audit me form. I worked at IRS. That's an audit me form. I can tell you, if there's an 8275 goes on a return, what do you think the auditor is going to, what would you look at? Client comes in with a return for last year and it's got an 8275. Are you going to look at that issue? You say, oh, they obviously explained that clearly, and move along. No, you focus on those. Those are audit me forms. I don't know what other way to say it. For this issue, though, I think an explanation and the easy peasy method is absolutely what you do. Our due diligence is to make sure that any number we're putting on there, especially something that's adjusting a carry forward going in, they can tell us that each of these contributions for each of those prior years was a non-deductible contribution, and it was made.
You know, we are talking about a roughly $77,000 catch-up. And, you know, that's somewhat sizable. I think the other thing we need to think about, just because my mind goes sideways, is were there any Roth conversions during this time frame that may have gotten screwed up? And if there were, that's something else we have to look at.
Good question. Yeah.
You know, I mean, just another thought. Tom, anything you want to add to this? You're never sure.
The only thing I would say is I agree with David that I would take the easy peasy approach generally to this situation.
It seems to be consensus that the easy peasy, but be sure to have all the documentation in order. I think the best approach there would be to have all those 8606s prepared, have the support of each deposit made each year, and should they come a knocking, you can go rocking and everybody's happy. We're dealing with a number on a tax return that it does not affect that tax return being filed. It only affects returns going forward. So it's important that when we have that number on that tax return, that we consider making sure that going forward, I would probably leave a statement on returns going forward that, or potentially for 4 or 5 years, leave a statement on return going forward. This number was started in 25 tax year as a catch-up number. This way, should I not be preparing that return in the future, the new preparer can say, where's that information? I need to have that for my file going forward. And that's just a courtesy for our future preparers, because how many of you are going to do this forever? We have the devil in the audience, folks. You know, I do know a couple of people that have told me they're going to die in their chair, and unfortunately, I have known many people that have died in their chair. That's not going to be me.